Perhaps some of you feel isolated from your parents, angry about how they've treated you. Perhaps you have trouble communicating with them, and you doubt whether it's even possible to establish a strong relationship, much of any relationship at all. If you've been wounded deeply, the idea of honoring them seems absolutely impossible. Do you hear the words courageous faith? Hey, I got a question for you. You know what you're giving your mom for Mother's Day? I didn't think so. That's kind of what I figured. Well, let me give you some ideas for Mother's Day, but they may not work this Mother's Day. They may work for a later one. As we approach Mother's Day, I think of two ancient quotes. First, by Plato, he said, "What is honored in a land will be cultivated there." Think about that as we talk about mothers. The second one is by William Shakespeare. "How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child." I want to invite you to join me on an incredible journey. For many of you, I think this is going to be one of the most courageous things you'll ever do. It's risky, full of unpredictable detours, unforeseen challenges, but I got to tell you, benefits beyond what you could ever imagine. You have God's Word on it. In fact, it's one of the 10 Commandments. It's the first of the 10 Commandments with a promise. It's the Fifth Commandment. It's Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. And I want to read it to you. It says, "Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land the Lord your God is giving you." Did you hear what it said? Honor your mother. The Hebrew word for honor means heavy, or to weigh them down with praise, with appreciation, value, accolades. Now, I know for many of you, that may seem impossible, maybe even inappropriate. And for some, as I read that scripture and they've considered its meaning, you're challenged by it. How can I truly take honor home to my mom this Mother's Day and maybe later on in June, Father's Day? This commandment comes with the promise. If we honor our parents, our days will be long, quote, long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. We'll receive blessings when we honor our parents. And it could be that it's better than that statin you're taking for your clogged veins around your heart. It could be better than any vitamin, jogging for a long life expectancy. Let me ask you some questions. Could it be that you could forge a deeper, more meaningful relationship with your parents by honoring them? Could it be that God is honored and pleased when we honor our parents? Well, that's really evident on the 10 Commandments. Could it be that your parents are just as desperate as you are to receive approval and affirmation? Some of us never thought about that. I hadn't. Could it be that the quality of your life that you experience today is directly tied to your obedience to that command? Could it be that a part of your longing and quest, now listen to this, this is really important. Could it be that a part of your longing and quest to become an adult is connected with honoring your parents? This is better than adulting. This is the way to find true adulthood. And could it be that obeying this command is an important test, listen to me, an important test of your relationship with God and whether or not your faith is a courageous faith? I've heard from hundreds of readers who have told me stories because I wrote a book called The Forgotten Commandment. And they've written me to tell me how they were facing very difficult circumstances with their parents, and yet they fought through the obstacles and took honor home to their mom or their dad, or both of them. These stories have convinced me more than ever that wherever you are in your relationship with your parents, whether it's a great relationship, just okay, strained or estranged, with God, there is hope and encouragement that you can go home with honor and you can bless them. And I can promise you one thing, if you're willing to take this honest look at your relationship with your parents and seek ways to honor them, working through this issue may be one of the most profound, mysterious, and incredible experiences of your life. That sounds like an audacious promise. I want to tell you, it was for me a hard thing to do, and for many others. Honor your parents with a grateful heart with the words, I love you, and by writing a tribute to your mom, a tribute to your dad, framing it and presenting it to them, and then face-to-face, reading it to them, and more than likely sobbing your way through it. At the end of this message, I'll explain the significance of something I've got here in the studio. I brought it with me today, and I'm going to increasingly bring some object lessons. I really enjoyed teaching sixth grade Sunday school, and I used object lessons to teach them. And I think we learn, we see things. This plant is symbolic of really honoring your parents. And I'll explain near the end of this message why it is. This plant may belong in Ripley's Believe It or Not, really, or maybe the Guinness Book of World Records. I don't know. Somebody who's watching this will look it up and tell me. But I'll explain what it's all about later if I don't kill the plant here. Well, the scene of how I learned to honor my mom and dad comes to mind. It is etched forever in my mind and heart. It was August of 1966. I just graduated from high school that past spring, and I stood in the driveway of my home in Ozark, Missouri. That's about 30 miles north of Branson, with my white four-door Chevrolet Bel Air, 6-cylinder. That's all my dad would trust me with. I was 18 years old, and I was about to leave home and go to the university. Boxes and suitcase filled the trunk and the back seat. My spinning rod was bent back against the window and pressed to conform of the rear of the car. Back in the house, my bedroom was abandoned and lonely, littered with reminders of the boy who had claimed those four walls as his own for 18 years. In a few moments, I would drive off to my new home, a dorm room at Crowder Junior College. It was a junior college then in Neosho, Missouri. It's now a 4-year school. And my mom and dad were standing there in that driveway. They were about to face the empty nest. There's something about thinking about that scene even right now. My mom seemed to be especially short that day, standing next to my dad. His arm was around her waist. It was sweet. Looking back, I can see in the words of my dad, I was bushwhacked by the emotion of that moment. No one had warned me that leaving home would be so difficult. Now, I know some of you are saying, it wasn't difficult for me. I was glad to be out of there, but not so for me. No one had told me that the metamorphosis of a boy becoming a man would begin in earnest when I left home and headed for the university. I can imagine what my dad, Ward, and my mom, Dalcie, that's right, Dalcie, Dalcie, were feeling at that moment. Perhaps they were thinking about this little boy who used to build mountains and roads in the sandbox next to the driveway. Perhaps my fishing pole sparked memories of us catching a stringer of white bass on Swan Creek down near Forsyth, which is just a little bit west of Branson. For the first time in my life, though, I remembered feeling a sense of enormous gratitude and appreciation to these two people who had given me so much of themselves and had fashioned my life, my character, my conscience, my soul. As I looked them in the eyes, emotion suddenly rose in my throat. And I was moved to embrace them and swallowed hard and fought back the tears as I said, I think for the first time, Mom, Dad, I love you. It's the first time I remember saying those words to my parents. In typical fashion for parents of their generation, they managed to sweep away the tears and say goodbye and give me a hug. It was a little tighter than normal and longer than any in my memory, but I remember feeling as I drove away something good and very right about my spontaneous display of love toward my parents. Looking back, I think I grew up a little bit that day in the driveway. As I backed the car out of the driveway and waved goodbye, I remember feeling happy that I had done what was right. I didn't know about the Fifth Commandment. Oh, of course I knew about the 10 Commandments, but I wasn't thinking about that. I just was expressing what was on my heart. Contrast my story with another story of someone leaving home. After one of her messages, professional speaker Bobby G. was resting in a lounge, and a 24-year-old woman with extremely short hair walked in. Bobby complimented the woman on her hair and how it looked and was surprised at her reply. She said, "Are you kidding?" The woman proceeded to tell Bobby that her hair was just growing back after being shaved off for the removal of a brain tumor. She also was recovering from an extreme case of anorexia, which the doctors had felt that had caused the tumor. And what circumstances led to the anorexia? She said, "When I was 18 years old, I came home from my high school graduation to find my bags packed and waiting on me on the front porch with a note from my dad that said I was now responsible for taking care of myself." Unimaginable. It seems to me that all my dad lived for was getting us kids out of the home by 18, she said. Determined to somehow reach her unfeeling father, she got herself arrested for shoplifting. That didn't work, so she stopped eating. And it wasn't until she lay in the hospital near death from anorexia that her father came to finally see her. When he got up to leave, she began screaming, "You just can't say it, can you? I'm going to die, and you can't say it." He was startled. He said, "Say what?" The words, "I love you. You never have, and I guess you never will." Those words finally shook the father. She said, "My father returned to my hospital bed and began to sob like a baby. When he realized that I'd almost died and was willing to risk my life just to hear him tell me he loved me." It's amazing the length some kids will go to try to get their parents to say, "I love you, and I'm proud of you." Maybe you're watching this and you'd love for your connection with your parents to be stronger. Many of us live our entire lives never fully understanding the connection we have with our parents. Whether you want to put your parents on a pedestal or leave them stranded on a desert island, one thing is certain: their words and actions have molded and shaped you in ways you may never know. In fact, they live in you. But it's more than just inheriting mannerisms. It's their habits, their values, their personalities. It's more than DNA. You are connected to them at the deepest level of your soul. Think of it this way. Some of you are proud to call your parents mom and dad, and you revel in that relationship, and you'd love for your connection to be stronger. Others of you don't know how to relate to them as you grow into a mature adult. Sometimes you enjoy them, and sometimes they've hurt you and angered you. And the reason that the pain is so acute is that you are connected to them. A lifeline called family. No matter what, you can't give up on that relationship. You want that connection to be stronger, much stronger. And some of you feel nothing but pain when you think of your mother or father. For some of you, this topic is going to revive painful memories of a parent who abandoned you, perhaps physically abused you, emotionally abused you, or sexually abused you, or all of the above. For you, this idea of honoring your parents is almost beyond imagination. And I want you to know, I do understand. I've talked to a lot of people where this is the case. You may be feeling intense anger about even just thinking about it. And I just want to encourage you, get a counselor that you can work through this and find an appropriate response and a way to honor your parents. Probably not going to be the time to write a tribute, but honor them and find ways to rebuild the relationship if possible. And maybe just even say the words, if you can say them, I forgive you. And, you can't determine what their response to you is going to be. You can determine what your response to them is. And my desire for you is to be restored and healed from the damage that has gone so deep. In fact, in my book, The Forgotten Commandment, chapter 15 is entitled, When the Damage Goes Deep. And it was written after I talked to a lot of people who've experienced what we're talking about here. I just want to encourage you to find someone, a skilled counselor who can coach you, encourage you, weep with you, and help you come out on the other side. And maybe for writing a tribute, you need to pull off in a cul-de-sac and park your car for a while. Maybe never coming out because it's so horrific. May God guide you as you go through that process. I mentioned that I wrote a book about honoring your parents, and one of the classic stories that happened when I first read it was getting a note from a woman who said, I got your book, and I was so angry with it after reading a few pages that I threw it across the room, and there it landed up against the wall, kind of like this, in a little bit of a tent. And every time I would walk by to go to the kitchen, go back to the living room, that book would call out to me to honor my parents and write a tribute to them. That's not what an author wants to hear about his book. It's not the kind of response we revel in. I just know this. When I was a young man working with teenagers in a ministry in Boulder, Colorado, one of my favorite messages to communicate was around this idea of honoring your parents. It was entitled, How to Raise Your Parents. Actually, I camouflaged the real message behind the title because the real challenge for these teenagers was to obey God's command to honor your father and mother by being obedient to them. As I spoke to these teenagers, I realized I was touching a deep, raw nerve. Many had such a difficult relationship with their parents that they found the command to honor them, it presented a challenge of enormous proportions, a major step, a courageous step of faith. In later years, I taught a summer class in Fort Collins, Colorado, about family relationships to students who were nearing graduation and others who had graduated. And one of the lectures was titled, Honoring Your Parents. It easily sparked the greatest response. I talked about honoring your parents by thanking them, by forgiving them, by praising them, by telling them you love them, and by taking the initiative as an adult to build the relationship. The response was fascinating. After one lecture, 3 young ladies, I'll never forget this, they came up to me and they all described what could have been the same dad. He wasn't. But it was a dad, who was aloof, detached, distant, unexpressive. All 3 of these women had tears in their eyes as they expressed their desire to somehow build a loving relationship with their dads. I counseled each of those women to honor their parents by taking the first step to change the relationship. I warned them, don't expect your father to come to you begging for your forgiveness. Instead, spend some time alone with God, evaluating how you are responding to your father. Then, when appropriate, you should call your father, maybe confessing being ungrateful, asking him for forgiveness, and then say, I love you, Dad. Later, I learned in each case that when those young ladies did that, the father's heart melted. One woman told me, with tears streaming down her face, for the first time in my life, my father and I communicated. In the past, my father gave me cars, jewelry, piano lessons, nice vacations, everything. I told him, I don't want your stuff. I just want you. He began to cry. Then I began to cry, she said. For the first time in my life, he told me that he loved me. She said, I don't think our relationship will ever be the same. And then she said something that was telling. She said, I can't wait to go home. Now that's a change of heart. Over the next few years, I continued to receive responses like that as I spoke about honoring your parents to adult audiences and challenged them to take honor home. I remember thinking, God's up to something here in this commandment that's much bigger, and we're missing it today. He wants to do something in our hearts first and in our relationship with our parents that I don't think I even had begun to understand. Now, let me just say a special word to children whose parents abused them. As I dive into this topic of honoring parents, some will embrace the idea enthusiastically. Perhaps you had a good relationship with your parents. If so, you'll probably be applying some of these creative ideas you'll find in my book. Perhaps some of you feel isolated from your parents, angry about how they've treated you. Perhaps you have trouble communicating with them, and you doubt whether it's even possible to establish a strong relationship, much of any relationship at all. If you've been wounded deeply, the idea of honoring them seems absolutely impossible. Do you hear the words courageous faith? For some of you, this topic may revive painful memories of a parent who abandoned you. Some of you suffered from physical, sexual, or emotional abuse. For you, the idea of honoring your parents is repugnant. You may feel intense anger just even considering it, thinking about it. There's no way you're going to honor them. And you may feel, I don't understand your personal situation. Well, there's no doubt about that. But hear this, I have no desire to place a burden on you of something you're unable to carry at this time. Perhaps this process will take you weeks, months, perhaps even years before you can work through your pain and take honor home. Perhaps you need time to work through the serious issues from your family background with the help of a counselor. But I have to believe that, tucked away in a quiet place in your soul, a part of you desperately desires a great relationship. Well, a good relationship. Let's say it that way. A good relationship with your parents. If so, remember this. God is in the reconciliation business. It's why he sent his son to die on a cross in our place, to bring us back together with him, to reconcile us with God. It could be that taking steps to honor your parents will begin to pry open a rusty door in your relationship with your parents by changing your heart and letting a fresh wind of healing occur. My personal odyssey with the concept of taking honor home to my parents included one more discovery. In fact, it was probably the most significant of all. My father passed away at the age of 66. In the years after that, I wondered, did he really know how I felt about him? I had worked hard the last few years of his life to express my love and appreciation to him, but the words seemed hollow. I hadn't thought about writing a tribute to him. And I thought, have I really honored him as I should? My dad was a great man. In fact, I'll share my tribute about him later on in June when we talk about Father's Day. But my mom was still alive. And I pledged then that I would not wait until she died to come to grips with her impact on my life. I resolved to let her know about my feelings for her, my deepest feelings. A letter simply wouldn't do. It couldn't express my emotions adequately. What I had in mind had to be something very personal, but also had to be, back to that word honor, heavy, weighted. And so I began to work on a written tribute to my mom. This was back before we had computers. And so as I jotted down the memories, I thought how I would put these on a piece of paper and take them to a typesetter and have the type set on a page. It's a lot easier now. As I jotted down those memories, my tears splattered on the legal pad about the lessons my mom had taught me and the enormous amount of times we'd had fun together. It was an emotional catharsis. Off and on for about a month, I worked on her tribute. I just work on it sporadically, write down on 3x5 cards. Again, it was before computers. And I worked on her tribute. I crafted and honed every word, shaping each phrase. When I finished it, I exhaled, and then I decided something was needed to set these words of honor apart from all the letters I had written in the past. With Barbara's help, I decided to have the tribute typeset and framed, making it a more formal-looking document. I took the finished product and mailed it home to Mom. That was a mistake. I'll comment about that in a moment. But I want to read to you what I said, and I want to show you that tribute. You can see there the tribute is dated February 1985, 40 years ago for this date. And it's not fancy. I wish I had a copy of what Barbara did for her parents. It's very fancy. She's an artist. But I made a couple of mistakes. And one of them was I didn't speak to her first person. I didn't speak to her as my mom. I spoke about her. And here's the way it reads. It says, when she was 35, she carried him in her womb when he did his best to kick her ribs out. It was not easy being pregnant in 1948. And I decided it needed to be to her. So I went back, and although this is what I wrote her, I've changed it on my father's and on other people. I've encouraged them to write it heart to heart to your parent, to your mom, to your dad. So here's mine. It's entitled, You Are More Than Somebody's Mother. When you were 35, you carried me and gave me life in your womb. I'm certain it wasn't easy being pregnant in 1948. There were no dishwashers or disposable diapers, only crude washing machines. After 9 long months, you gave birth to me, breech, a difficult, dangerous birth. She would say with a chuckle, "You came out feet first, hit the floor running, and you've been running ever since." She called me, affectionately, the Road Runner. A warm kitchen was your trademark, the most secure place in our home, a shelter in the storm. Your narrow but tidy kitchen always attracted a crowd. It was the place where food and friends were made. You have always been a good listener. You always seemed to have the time. Certain smells used to drift out of your kitchen. The aroma of a juicy cheeseburger used to draw me like a magnet as a teenage young man. There were your green beans seasoned with hickory smoked bacon grease, sugar cookies, pecan pie, and best of all, at Christmas time, your chocolate bonbons. Oh, you weren't perfect. Once when I was a mischievous 3-year-old boy, I was banging pans together while you were on the phone, and you impatiently threw a pencil at me. And the pencil, much to your shock, missed my eye by just a little bit. And right now there's a little piece of lead in my cheek. It's still there. I used to play the sympathy card on that, by the way, when I needed it with my mom. Another time you tied me to my bed with a rope because when I was 5 years old, I tried to harm my teenage brother with a cast iron gun, toy gun, and throwing it at him. And it missed him and he dodged it perfectly. But in horror, I watched it fall end over end right into an antique vase that you loved. And it developed a split personality. I'm still very sorry about that, Mom. Oh, you taught me about forgiveness, too. When I was a teenager, you forgave me. And I still can't believe I did this. You forgave me when I got angry with you because you were calling me to go to school, to study hall. And I got angry and took a swing at you. I was in bed and unfortunately missed. The most profound thing about you was you modeled a love for God, for my dad, for our family, and for other people, especially people in need. Compassion was always your companion. You taught me about giving to others when you didn't feel like it. You also taught me about accountability. Come home on time. You inspected that. Truthfulness, honesty, transparency. You modeled a tough loyalty to my dad for over 44 years until his death. He always knew, and we always knew, divorce was never an option. And you took care of your parents when old age took its toll. You also went to church faithfully. In fact, you led me as a 6-year-old boy to Jesus Christ as his Savior and Lord one Sunday evening at a Bible study class that you led. Even today, your age doesn't stop you from fishing in a cold rain, running off to get Chinese food, or wolfing down a cheeseburger and a dozen bonbons with me. You are truly a woman to be honored. You are more than somebody's mother. You're my mom. And Mom, I love you. Dennis. I knew she'd like it, but I was unprepared for the depth of her appreciation. She hung it right above her table where she had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The only thing that was in competition with that tribute was an old tick-tock clock. It was no rival for Mom's tribute. She shared it with the family, the television repairman, the plumber, countless others who passed through her kitchen. Later, she told me, I'll never forget this. She said, on days when I'm down emotionally and feeling alone, I'll read that and think, how could he write that about his mean old mom? Seeing the tangible representation of my love on the wall, right above her breakfast table, reminded her of the truth. what she did well as a mother, and as a result, she felt honored. As I mentioned earlier, my only regret was that I mailed it to her. Years later, I'd watch Barbara personally read her tribute to her parents, and seeing that emotional, poignant moment with her parents. By the way, Barbara cried her way through it, and so did her parents, who were Norwegian, and they had no emotion, but they were emotional on that Christmas. It was an unforgettable gift. I can't help but wish I had driven home to Ozark, 4 hours from Little Rock, with nothing else on my agenda other than to read my tribute to my mom, and then to cry with her together. Now, 4 decades after I wrote that tribute to my mom, I'm still looking for ways to honor her. And I mentioned something that I had that I want to show you. This plant. And you may notice that the plant's coming from a pair of little booties. I think you can see it. This was given to my mom when I was born 77 years ago. And it's the same plant. I've never pulled it out by the roots. I don't think it would survive, but it's lived. And you know what? I keep this alive in honor of my mom. Some people have pets. They don't live this long. I wonder if it might belong in the Guinness Book of World Records. But I love this. It's in my bathroom, where the window will give its light and I can give it water. Now the question is, what will you give your mom for Mother's Day? A dustbuster? Or what are you going to give your dad? Another tie? House shoes? Or their next birthday? Their next anniversary? Or Christmas? Why don't you weigh them down with honor by writing a tribute? And get to work on it right now. Maybe you won't make their birthday. Maybe you won't make their anniversary, but sure could make Christmas. Ask God to give you the words of honor for your parents. Then watch for a miracle. Those words will flow from your pen. Turn it into a tribute and frame it, and then take it home. Next Christmas, why not weigh them down with honor by writing a tribute? Whether your parents are alive or have passed away, why don't you pray right now and ask God to give you words of honor for your parents? Heavy words, great appreciation, love. Maybe they need to drip with emotion. Then write these words down and turn it into a tribute that you'll never regret writing, and certainly they'll never regret receiving. It may take you 60 minutes to do it, 6 hours, 6 months, 6 years, but just do it. That's really the purpose of this episode of Inspiring Courageous Faith. For a lot who watch this is going to challenge you to the core, to be courageous. Do your duty in the face of fear. You don't know how they're going to respond, and I understand that. But just do it anyway. Let God take care of their response, or their lack of response. Just be obedient, and then watch what God does. You may be surprised. One young lady wrote a tribute to her mom, and she expressed that she thought she was in jail, that her mother had put her in jail. Not a physical jail, but just an emotional one, because their relationship was so strange. But as she wrote the tribute, she said, I determined I was the one who was in jail. And in essence, she said, the tribute opened the door and swung it wide open to have a relationship with my mom. And you know what? That's what God did. And today, she's got a great relationship with her mom. Years, a couple of decades worth of relationship. If you've been challenged by this episode of Inspiring Courageous Faith, to dig deeper in your relationship with your parents, I want to challenge you to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and then hit the like button, and then ask God to show you some friends to send it to. Maybe it's a sister, a brother, an uncle, an aunt. Maybe they need to get this episode and do something courageous too. Send it. And keep on coming back for more inspiring, courageous faith.
Go to theRainey's.org/podcast for more inspiring, courageous faith content.